Shadowed walls, the haunting that followed me home. It started as a dream, or at least that's what I told myself at first. A quiet, surreal nightmare that I couldn't quite shake even after waking. I had just moved into a small, rundown apartment in the city. It wasn't much, but it was cheap and close to work. The landlord had been upfront about its flaws: creaky floors, old plumbing, and a few cracks in the walls. What he didn't mention was the history, a history that would soon consume me. The first night I barely slept. I kept hearing noises, faint whispers, a shuffling sound like someone dragging their feet. I figured it was just the neighbors or the old pipes groaning in the walls. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. It wasn't until the second night that I realized the noises weren't coming from the walls. They were coming from inside my apartment. I woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of something scraping across the floor. My heart was pounding as I turned on the bedside lamp and looked around the room. Nothing seemed out of place, but the sound persisted coming from the living room. I grabbed a flashlight and crept out of bed, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination. When I reached the living room, I saw it. The coffee table, which I had pushed against the wall earlier that day, was now in the center of the room. The rug beneath it was bunched up as though it had been dragged. My first thought was that someone had broken in, but the door was still locked, the chain bolted. There were no signs of forced entry. I told myself I must have moved the table earlier and forgotten, even though I knew that wasn't true. I pushed it back against the wall, straightened the rug, and went back to bed. But I didn't sleep. I couldn't. The next morning, I decided to do some cleaning, hoping it would distract me. As I was dusting the shelves, I noticed something strange. A photo I had placed on the mantel, a picture of me and my sister from a few years ago, was missing. I searched everywhere but couldn't find it. Later that evening, as I was folding laundry, I found the photo lying on the floor in the hallway. The glass was cracked, the frame splintered, as though someone had stomped on it. I was beginning to think I was losing my mind. Objects didn't just move on their own. Photos didn't just disappear and reappear broken, but I didn't have an explanation. That night, I locked my bedroom door and slept with the lamp on. The dreams started after that. In them, I was standing in my apartment, but it was different. The walls were decayed, the air heavy with the smell of mildew. Shadows flickered in the corners, moving even though there was no light source. And then there was the figure, always in the same spot, standing in the hallway. Tall, impossibly thin, with limbs that seemed too long and a face obscured by darkness. It never moved, never spoke, but I could feel its eyes on me. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, the feeling of those eyes lingering even after I opened my own. And then one night, I woke to find the bedroom door, which I had locked before going to bed, standing wide open. I didn't go to work the next day. Instead, I spent hours researching the building, trying to find any information I could. That's when I found the story. Years ago, a man named Peter Groves had lived in my apartment. He was a reclusive artist, known for his dark, unsettling paintings. Neighbors said he was obsessed with shadows, always talking about the things he saw in them. One night, he disappeared. The landlord found his apartment empty, his paintings slashed to pieces. The only thing left behind was a message scrawled on the wall in what looked like black paint. The shadows took me. I wanted to believe it was just a story, some urban legend to scare new tenants. But deep down, I knew better. The shadows in my apartment weren't normal. They moved when they shouldn't, stretched across walls where there was no light. And the figure from my dreams, it was real. I had seen it, just for a moment, standing at the end of the hallway the night before. I had blinked and it was gone, but the image was burned into my mind. That evening, I decided I couldn't stay there anymore. I started packing my things and shoving clothes into bags and throwing essentials into boxes. As I was packing, the lights flickered. The air grew colder, and I heard it, the faint sound of whispering, growing louder and louder. It was coming from the hallway. I turned, and there it was. The figure, taller than I remembered, its limbs almost brushing the ceiling. It stood perfectly still, its head tilted as though it were watching me. The whispers grew deafening, filling my head until I thought I might scream. And then it moved. It didn't walk. It glided, its body unnaturally smooth as it closed the distance between us. I stumbled backward, tripping over the coffee table and falling to the floor. The figure loomed over me, its face still obscured, its presence suffocating. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, and then just as suddenly as it had appeared, it was gone. The lights stopped flickering, the whispers ceased, and the room was silent. I left that night, abandoning everything I couldn't carry. I didn't care about the lease, didn't care about the deposit. I just wanted to get out. I moved in with a friend, telling them only that the apartment had been creepy. I didn't tell them about the figure or the shadows or the whispers. I didn't tell anyone. For a while, things were normal. I started sleeping through the night again, stopped jumping at every sound. But then, a few weeks later, I found something in my bag. It was the photo of me and my sister, the glass still cracked, the frame still splintered, and written on the back, in jagged black letters, was a single word: mine. I still don't know what it was that haunted that apartment or why it chose me. All I know is that it's still out there, waiting, watching, and no matter where I go, I can't escape its shadow.